A CNAME record is an abbreviation for Canonical Name Record and is a type of resource record in the domain name system used to specify that a domain name is an alias for another domain, the canonical domain. All information, including subdomains, IP addresses, etc., are defined by the canonical domain. This is convenient when running multiple services from a single IP address. You can, for example, point ftp.example.com and www.example.com to the A record example.com, which in turn points to the IP address. Then, if you ever need to change the IP address, you only have to change it in one place. CNAME records must always be pointed to another domain name, never to an IP address. Details: DNS CNAME records are specified in RFC 1034 and clarified in Section 10 of RFC 2181. CNAME records are handled specially in the domain name system, and have several restrictions on their use. When a DNS resolver encounters a CNAME record while looking for a regular resource record, it will restart the query using the canonical name instead of the original name is returned, rather than restarting the query. The canonical name that a CNAME record points to can be anywhere in the DNS, whether local or on a remote server in a different DNS zone. For example, if there is a DNS zone as follows: name type value, bar.example.com, CNAME foo.example.com, foo.example.com, a 192.0.2.23. When an A record lookup for bar.example.com is done, the resolver will see a CNAME record and restart the checking at foo.example.com and will then return 192.0.2.23. Which side is the CNAME? As mentioned above, with a CNAME record one can point a name such as bar.example.com to foo.example.com. Because of this, during casual discussion the bar.example.com side of a DNS entry will often be called the CNAME, or a CNAME. However, this is inaccurate. The canonical name of bar.example.com is foo.example.com. Because CNAME stands for canonical name, the right-hand side is the actual CNAME. This confusion is specifically mentioned in RFC 2181, clarifications to the DNS specification. The left-hand label is an alias for the right-hand side, which is a canonical name. In other words, a CNAME record like this: bar.example.com, CNAME foo.example.com, may be read as, bar.example.com is an alias for the canonical name foo.example.com. A client will request bar.example.com and the answer will be foo.example.com. Restrictions: CNAME records must always be pointed to another domain name, never to an IP address. An alias defined in a CNAME record must have no other resource records of other types. The exception is when DNSSEC is being used, in which case there can be DNSSEC-related records such as a RSIG, nanosecond, etc. CNAME records that point to other CNAME records should be avoided due to their lack of efficiency, but are not in error. It is possible, then, to create unresolvable loops with CNAME records, as in foo.example.com, CNAME bar.example.com, bar.example.com, CNAME foo.example.com. MX and NS records must never point to a CNAME alias. So, for example, a zone must not contain constructs such as example.com, mx0 foo.example.com, foo.example.com, CNAME host.example.com, host.example.com, a 192.0.2.1. Domains that are used for email may not have a CNAME record. In practice this may work, but can have different behavior with different mail servers, and can have undesired effects. DNAME record: a DNAME record or delegation name record is defined by RFC 6672. A DNAME record creates an alias for an entire subtree of the domain name tree. In contrast, the CNAME record creates an alias for a single name and not its subdomains. Like the CNAME record, the DNS lookup will continue by retrying the lookup with the new name. If a DNS resolver sends a query without eDNS, or with eDNS version 0, then a name server sends multiple CNAME records to simulate the DNAME recorder. CNAMEs for every node on a subtree have the same effect as a DNAME for the entire subtree. For example, if there is a DNS known as follows: foo.example.com, DNAME by.example.com, by.example.com, a 192.0.2.23, bar example.com, a 192.0.2.24, by.example.com, a 192.0.2.25. An A record lookup for foo.example.com will fail because a DNAME is not a CNAME. However, a lookup for foo.example.com will be DNAME mapped and return the A record for bar example.com, which is 192.0.2.24. If the DNAME record had been a CNAME record, this request would have failed. Lastly, a request for foo.example.com would be DNAME mapped and return 192.0.2.25. See also, List of DNS record types, zone file, references. External links, RFC 1912 is Rong Meng Wang's analysis of CNAME restrictions. RFC 2219 use of DNS aliases for network services.